Dr. Janice Campbell. Thank you so much for joining us, and I'm very excited to learn more from you about the five elements, especially around creativity. I'm not going to give you a long introduction because there's a lot to introduce, but you are very well versed in the eastern side of the five elements, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Thank you. If, just as a side note, if you're wondering why I'm wearing a turtleneck in May in Maryland, it's because it's slightly cool outside, which means that it's freezing here in the basement in my office. So I have a heater at my feet and I'm wearing a turtleneck and everyone else is outside in shorts, just saying. And also a couple of things on the handout that everybody got. I think everybody got. When it says if you want to learn more about distance mind body integration, you can actually now just go to my drjaniccampbell.com website and there's an actual page dedicated to it, and that's easier than going to Pick My Brain, which is the link that I put there. So yeah, I am not going to go into a big who am I. If you want to know all the crazy things I do, please visit my website. I am talking on this particular topic because of my education as an acupuncturist and how it's a particular model that I like from ancient medicine because it speaks to me the way the world speaks to me since I was a little kid. And it's a deceptively simple model that can be applied to a lot of different things. And so with that, let's jump in. Let me get my, can I share screen? Am I good to share screen? Yes.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay. So Michelle asked me to talk about, she was like, oh, creativity, it'll fit right in. So here we are. And in talking about creativity, what we're talking about really is how we move within the oneness of creation. How whether it's how you creatively arrange your bedroom, or how you write an email, or how you develop a spreadsheet, or how you paint a painting, or how you do any number of other things. This part of the medicine was first originally thought up or observed by the ancient cultures in Asia, looking at how things were happening in nature, because it was a largely agrarian society. They were thinking, look at all of this that we're a part of, and and any farmer will tell you they have to be aware of how nature moves and how all the animals and plants are part of it, and how we also are part of it to be able to run their farm well. And so they were looking first at the oneness of everything, and as we all are, if we take a minute to look, being amazed by it. And they started trying to define it. And so the first thing they looked at, which everybody has probably seen, this yin yang symbol, is to be able to describe everything, you have to be able to describe what is and what isn't. And the thing to remember about this symbol, though, is that it is just a snapshot. This is actually the oneness in motion. This is just a very fast snapshot of what's happening. It's not a stagnant state of being. And so as dawn happens and the light grows and we get to midday, then the darkness will start to creep in, the light will start to fade as we get to midnight, but it's constantly in motion. It's just an attempt to describe what's happening in the world. And these being the fact that within a bright sunny day, there are shadows. To be able to even see the nighttime, and to be aware of how deep the sky is and how dark it is, we see stars, and that gives us a contrast. And that contrast can be played out through many, many things. Also, being an agrarian society, they started looking at the cycles of what everything went through. So beginning with, and this is not a completely, it's not oriented completely the way we're going to talk about it, but it's good enough. Um, the starting with the seed in the ground, which is full of potential and deep yen, just waiting, it's potential energy waiting to move, and then it begins to move and it springs out, develops, then begins to die back, then drops seeds into the ground again, and the whole process starts over. And this is how, on a small level, what they're looking at is um, the microcosm of how things work in plants. And then they took this idea, applied it to the larger sort of macrocosm of what was happening seasonally. And looking at that, it's the winter being when that is very much like that seed under the ground, building up potential energy, which then pushes up out of the ground in the springtime, comes to fruition, starts getting pollinated, everything's, and then eventually produces beans or fruit or whatever, and which are then dropped back into the ground during fall, and then the process starts all over again. So it's looking at the macrocosm of how that moves. And then they thought, well, if we're part of nature, how does it apply to us? And there's actually a whole nother conversation we can have about how it plays out in the body, as far as different organ systems and different functions of the body, different movements of the body, smells, odors, tastes, colors, all sorts of things. But for today, we're talking about some of the emotional aspects or mental aspects of it. And so again, with water, what we're talking about, or winter, or the deep seed in the ground, it's building up courage. It's also facing the fear that it might get eaten by a bird by the time it gets out of the ground. And but it's also curiosity about what's above the ground. What's over there? How do I get brave enough to stick my head up out of the dirt? And the same with human beings. And courage and fear being two sides of the same coin, that they're, to some degree, I've heard it said there is no courage without fear. If you aren't walking towards fear, then there's nothing, it's not terribly courageous. But there's also a curiosity involved in that, a bravery to be curious about what's ahead. And then that feeds into, when these things are in balance, it feeds into the passion and the creation aspect of what we do and how we, but it also can, if wood's not moving smoothly, it can show up as frustration. Wood's a unique element in the fact that it is also in charge of how all the emotions move. It's also the thing that moves the blood in the body. And so it's in charge of the smooth flow of chi all the way around the circle, but it has its own little thing that it deals with, which is the balance of frustration and what is classically translated as anger. But I'm using the word passion here, not romantic passion, but the passion to do something, the drive to do something. And anger gets a bad rap in Western culture, particularly. And really, when it's a healthy anger, it is moving towards solution. It's moving towards creativity. It's moving towards positive change. The best example I know of for someone who had very clear, healthy anger was Martin Luther King. That man had a lot of things to be mad about and a lot of things to be pissed off about, but instead he let his anger drive him towards community and partnership and creative solutions and bigger ideas. And so it's a very necessary part of being human. And when people want to shy away from their anger, I worry a little bit about them, because what happens is then that same force gets turned either back on themselves in the form of depression, and even sometimes tragically as suicidal thoughts, or it becomes really frustrating and doesn't play out well with other people, when in fact it's actually a fantastic force to be harnessed. Then from there we go into high summer, which is all about connection. It's also about the completion of things. It's when the human gets reaches maturity, sort of the height of activity, which also plays out in that this high spot up here in the yin yang symbol. And with this, fire is also they're all unique elements in their way, but fire also most of the other elements have two organs and meridian systems associated with them, but fire has four. And fire is the seat of the heart, which is the center of all of what we are. But it's also it has three other components. One is the sorter, the thing that decides, sort of what mail gets to be seen by the heart and what doesn't, what's junk mail or what can be dealt with by somebody else and what the heart needs to pay attention to. That's the sorter. There's also sort of the gatekeeper who decides who gets into one's heart and who doesn't. And then there's what I refer to, having been a stage manager in my first career, the stage manager of the heart, that makes sure information gets out to all the tiny villages at the far reaches, all the fingers and toes, and also make sure that information gets brought back in. It's as opposed to the gatekeeper who deals with the one-on-one relationships, the stage manager is in charge of big group events. It's a healthy stage manager, and it's actually called the Sanjiao, but a healthy Sanjiao in somebody you can throw a good party and enjoy the party themselves, as opposed to being somebody who throws a good party but doesn't get any of the joy out of it, is too busy trying to make everything perfect for everybody else. And then from fire we move into earth, which is associated with both belonging and isolation. It's the harvest time of year. It's the ability to take things in, to ingest information, to ingest experiences, and to transform them and make them part of who we are, or send them on down to metal to be discarded. Earth, also in some of the ancient text, is centered here in the middle, with wood and metal to either side and fire and water up and down. For the purposes of this conversation, I'm going with this model, but it can be explained either way. When it's in the center, it's actually a discussion of how it shows up at the transitions between seasons, as things begin to, like, what are we taking away from winter that will then feed into wood? What are we harvesting from winter? What are we ingesting from winter that feeds wood? And likewise, wood to fire, fire to metal, etc. But in this model, it's really that late summer harvest time where we're talking about not just belonging in a community, but also belonging in our lives and our bodies in this moment. It's being grounded and present to everything that's going on, and also really relishing all the work and all the things that have happened that brought us to that point, which then feeds into metal, which is the two functions of metal are both to grasp towards the heavenly chi and wanting to being drawn to beauty and perfection and refinement and value, but it's also about deciding what is not of value and letting it go. One of the organs associated with metal is the large intestine, which does exactly that in the body. It takes the last valuable thing and lets the rest of the crap go, quite literally. But this also allows you to do that in other layers of who you are. It also is where grief resides. It's where loss and grief reside. And it's how we process that, how we, again, keep what's valuable and let the rest of it go, is how it informs our courage and our fear and our curiosity and being able to move around. It's the person who has lost their sweetheart, through some tragic accident. When they work through this grief, then they have the courage to move upward into looking for another partner, to maybe finding that partnership, being able to really cherish that partnership, etc. So creativity, how's this all fit in? Well, if you think about it, that deep water part that we've been talking about is sort of like being faced with that blank page, that unknown, that whether it's a blank canvas, a blank page you're going to write something with, a blank sheet of music, whatever it is that your particular art form takes, or your creativity takes, that project that you know needs to get to there, but you're not sure how to start here, all of that. That's the purview of your water element. That's the thing that then pulls on that courage, addresses that fear. It's just, yes, absolutely frightening. White pages are scary, and pulls on that, uses that curiosity to get to courage. And then allows you to also gives that the force behind it, the force of will behind it to move forward. And just like if when celery goes limp, if you put it in water, it'll stand back up. Water then, when it's feeding wood, will allow wood to be healthy. It will allow wood to have more trigger pressure to continue to move upwards, rather than either slump or beat up on itself or pick fights with other people. Which then leads us into the, ooh, what am I gonna do? And what if I did that? And oh, wow. And some of you that know me know that I pretty much live in these two things. I mean, we all have all five, but at least what you hear is a lot of this stuff. But the ooh, what next is that curiosity from water going into being able to see things and pick things and decide and try things out and experiment and throw things against the wall and be like, ooh, that didn't work. What if I did that? Without letting the judgment that you find in metal coming over here and chopping the wood up too much, that it's just like, let the wood grow. It's springtime. Let it figure stuff out. Some plants live, you plant, my mother one year planted 200 strawberry plants because she was sure half of them would die. 3 of them died. And so we ended up with an unbelievable amount of strawberry jam. And every time someone left the house, we had to take a bucket of strawberries with us to give to whoever we saw on the street. I mean, it was ridiculous. And, generally speaking, there's always something that doesn't work. Maybe not in that ratio, but that's where the sort of the drive of it happens. And then from there we go to, I jumped too fast. How do I go back? I don't know how to go. Well, now I've got all of them. I don't know how to make it go back. This is I'm using my husband is very committed to Linux and open source, and this is the first time I've done an open source presentation. So poof, there you go. You get all of it. But with the fire is where things start really coming together, and you really can enjoy the process, and there's almost a partnership between you and either the team you're working with, or the materials that you're using, or just what you're doing, so that there's joy in going and getting into it. And this is also part of where we start to get lost in the connection to it. And suddenly there's not, suddenly we don't know what time it is, and we haven't eaten lunch, and we're wondering why we're starving. And then we get it to a point where we're like, okay, this looks like something. I think we're close. And we come and we move into the earth phase, where it's all about taking it, if it's something you're working on for a client, taking and showing it to them. If it's, just something you're super proud of and you want somebody to say, that's cool, or that's pretty, showing it to them, or your very own harvesting. It doesn't even have to include other people necessarily, where you are like, wow, the garden looks great. I put all that work in and the garden looks amazing. And being able to really take in, my son right now is struggling with this. He's doing a lot of, he and his volunteer grandmother have been doing art classes online. She's a brilliant artist, and he can get all the way through fire, but when he gets to earth, he can't own something being good. He can't own the harvest of his work, and so he's struggling with this one right now. And from that comes, okay, we've seen we've harvested the good stuff. We've sorted out the bruised vegetables. We've made them into tomato sauce. And now we move into metal, or into that fall type part of the process, which is, okay, this part of the process was valuable. Don't need to do that again. We can skip that part the next time we do this. Or, I've really learned something that I didn't know about this particular process, or these particular materials, or these people, or whatever it is, these elements of the creative act that I'm going to do that again. That's a really great idea. And so that's where that reassessment happens, which then once we get to letting go of all the stuff that didn't work and be like, "Ooh, these things really worked. Ooh, now what can we do with them?" And now we're back in the middle of it. Now this cycle can be applied to the whole project as a whole, but all of this can also happen in like, the first 15 minutes of you sitting at a drawing table or doing whatever it is you're doing. It can be applied micro to macro on anything that's going on. I have to figure out where I am. All right. So now comes the audience participation part. Some of you know that a big piece of all of the work that I do is about getting people back into their bodies and back connected to themselves so that they can connect to what they do and to other people in their lives in a healthy way. So the first thing I want you to do, though, before we launch into the audience participation part, is I would like you to look at your worksheets I gave you. Handouts, I think is what we're calling them. And I want you to, there's some questions. There's one page that has the 5 circles on it, and it says greatest weaknesses. And I want you to think about what we've talked about so far. I think it says weaknesses, something to that effect anyway. And in each one of the circles, I want you to just jot down, don't spend a whole lot of time on it, but just, your gut will tell you. Write down your 5, where you get dinged. And there will be more in some circles than there are in others. And there may be a circle that doesn't have anything in it because you've got that one handled. Everybody's different. But just take a minute to do that. Then after you've done that page, go to the next page where it says strengths, greatest strengths. And I want you to do the cycle again and see what comes up for greatest strength. And so I'll be quiet for a minute while you do that. I'm sure you've had some things occur to you in this little exercise. And now what we're going to do is we're actually going to put it in your body. So what I want you to do is, don't really look at your notes so much as, if you want to glance at them briefly. But what I want you to do is hold the 2 things in water, the challenges and the strengths, and just notice what comes up in your body when you think about creating this stage of creating. Take a little inventory, see if there's anything tight, any little fluttery things, whatever it is. And just make a good mental note about that. And now what I want you to do is become aware of the insides of your eyes, like the bridge of your nose, right here. And I want you to extend that awareness up across your forehead, over the top of your head, and down the back of your head and the back of your neck, across your shoulders, down the backs of your arms, backs of your hands, your fingers, down between your shoulder blades, the back door to your heart, across your shoulder blades, and through the back of your ribs, your mid back, your low back, your hips, your butt, the backs of your thighs, the hollows of your knees, down the backs of your calves, your Achilles tendon, your ankles, your heels, the soles of your feet. And then coming up from the sole of your feet to the inside of your ankles, up through the insides of your legs, your knees, your thighs, up through your torso, in and out of your rib cage, all the way to your collarbone. And allowing that awareness to connect the back of you to the front of you, including the fronts of your arms, your face, your throat, everything. Allowing all of you to become present and solid and full of potential. And now I want you to think about those two things in water, those two groups of things that you wrote down. Your strength, your weaknesses. And just see if anything's changed. See if anything's changed in your body. See if anything's changed in what comes up mentally or emotionally or physically when you think about them. And just take a good note, both internally and if you need to, a quick jot down of something. All right, ready for the next one? Okay, so now we're in wood. And think about all the things that you've written down. Take a glance if you need to at the worksheets. And think about what comes up when you think about this part of the process, this part of creating something or getting something done. What shows up in your body? Notice any tightness, any urgency, any quicker intake of breath, anything that might happen when you think about this part. All right, and now that you've got a good sense of what's going on in your body when you think of this, this is what I want you to do. I want you to think, starting again on the inside of your big toe. I want you to feel almost like an actual growing vine of awareness, of energy, of vitality moving up from your big toe, across the top of your foot, through your ankle, up the inside of your calves. Every joint it passes, even if it's not directly touching it, it lubricates and opens and helps move and be a little more loose and powerful. Up through the insides of your thighs, your pelvis, again through your abdomen, and stopping just short of your rib cage at what the point is called, translated into English, is gate of hope, and allowing that to dive inside and shoot up through your upper torso, through your neck, into your head and the crown of your head, and up to the center of the universe. Starting your feet, rooted in your feet, and springing up through the center, through your body, through the crown of your head, all the way to the center of the universe, which is full of possibility. Now I want you to go back and think about those things in wood that you wrote down about yourself, those strengths, those weaknesses. See if anything's changed about that, your relationship to those. See if anything's changed in your body when you think about those things. Take a little internal note so you know you have an embodied understanding, and jot down a few words if you need to. All right, ready for the next one? Okay, this is the fun one. So, I want you to look at what you've written down about fire, your weaknesses, your strengths, including any I don't deserve that, or I have to be responsible and not have fun, any of those things. Or or I love sneaking out and having fun when nobody else is. Whatever the thing is. Take a look at those. Notice what they feel like in your body. Notice where they are. Is there any sense of lack? Is there any sense of undeserving? Is there any sense of disconnection? Or is there any sense of, I'd really rather be laughing right now? Whatever it is. Okay, now let's do it, connect it to your body. So I want you to become aware of a point halfway between your hips and halfway between the front of you and the back of you, about a hand's width below your belly button. I probably should have said that backwards, or the other way around. Hands width below your belly button, halfway between your hips, halfway between the front of you and the back of you. That's easier. There you go. This is the point that's called your lower dantian. Some say this is where the first cell divides that becomes you. And allow that little glowing ball, that little energy center that goes with you your entire life, allow it to sprout a little seed, a little plant that rises up happily through your torso, brushing up against your organs, saying hi as it goes by, getting all the way up, weaving in and out of your rib cage, making it look all pretty, until it gets to your heart. And your heart is like your own internal sun. It radiates out its very own particular light that is just yours. Nobody else has one like it. And when that little plant gets all the way up there, it blooms into the most gorgeous flower you've ever seen that has never existed anywhere else. Basking in the radiance of your own sun. Becoming aware of the beauty and the power and the peace and the just how cool you are for just being you without doing anything else. With your own internal sun, your own internal flower. Reminded of the knowledge that you do not need to seek anyone else's sun. It's cool when you notice them. Don't get me wrong. But you don't need their warmth. You have your own. And letting that radiance and that understanding and that knowing permeate throughout your entire being. All the nooks and crannies. Front, back, sideways, up, down, all of it. And then out, even just slightly past your skin, into what we call your wei qi, your defensive qi. And let it bring with it the amazing fragrance of that flower, as well as the radiance of that sun. Until it all reaches your head, cleans out any cobwebs there might be there that tell you bad things about yourself, because they're wrong. And then tickle the back of your eyelids so your eyes have to open so your heart can see the world. Now think about the things on fire that you wrote down about yourself. And just see if anything changed. Again, taking very good internal notes first so you have the feeling and it's in your body. And then if you have to write down a word or two, you can. Y'all ready for the next one? So look on your sheet about what you wrote about Earth, your strengths and your weaknesses, and thinking about the creative process. See what comes up in your body. Including any sort of uncomfortable bits. Happy bits are always welcome, but any uncomfortable bits also are good to know where they are and where you're carrying them. Once you have those firmly acknowledged, I want you to close your eyes. Make sure you're comfortable in your chair. You're letting the planet hold you up, not working any harder than you have to be held up by your chair or the couch or the car or wherever you are. In the floor, in the ground, in the planet. And I want you to think of a being, living or dead, two-legged, four-legged, no-legged, three-legged, six-legged, whatever, that just loves you no matter what, without a whole lot of complication. Not a lot of requirements attached, preferably none. Once you have that being in mind, I want you to let yourself, in your mind's eye, look them in the eye. And allow yourself to experience that deep belonging. Not just in this moment, but always. In this body, in this universe, in this point in time and space. Completely belonging, all of you. All the parts, all the things, all the history, all the possible futures, all of the right nows. Completely belonging. Completely held up by the earth. And knowing it's not just okay that you're here, but that you are an absolute part of the whole. You are not alone in this, whatever this is. And allow yourself to enjoy that, to be held by that. Allowing that to seep into your cells, to be held by your flesh. And once you are completely saturated with that understanding and knowing, let yourself come back into the room and take a peek at those things, those strengths and those weaknesses in Earth, and see if anything's changed. Again, making sure you take the body note first, and then writing down any actual words you want to. I forgot to change the slide. Okie doke. Ready for the next one? Yes, no? Okay. All right. So here we are. Here we are in metal. Have a look at your list, your notes, not really list, your notes of your strengths and your weaknesses. See where they are in your body. And some of them may not be holding on like the others were. Some of them may be floating. They may be like little clouds or mists or clumps of things that you can't quite put a spot to. Some will be solid, but you may also find some wispy clouds and cobwebs. And so now that you have those in mind and you know where they are, you're going to close your eyes one more time. And firmly attached to whatever it is you're sitting on, nice and solid and almost weighted down by the strength and the power of who you are. I want you to open the top of your head, creating in your mind and in your being what a friend of mine calls your own internal Alaska. Another thing might be a cathedral, Grand Canyon, if you've ever been there in America. But some great expanse that causes you to be stunned by its vastness and its beauty and its quiet. Allowing it to exist in all its magnitude while still pouring into you, into all the little internal spaces between all the other stuff that makes up you. That breath of fresh air, that little extra space for something new. All the way down through your body, aerating who you are. Reminding you about what's holy about being alive, what's beautiful about being alive, and how that also is connected to what is practical and real and corporeal and solid. Letting your breath act as the billows for that integration. And letting each exhale allow you to release anything that's in the way of that. Any old ideas or stories or things that were useful once that you don't need to be lugging around anymore. Bringing in the breath of heaven and letting the rest of the crap go. Keeping only what's valuable and beautiful and expansive. And allowing your awareness to keep hold of that vastness you've tapped into. Now give yourself a picture window to see it through, so that you can come more back into your own body in the present and back into the room. You take a look at those things you wrote down about yourself and see if anything's changed, if you've let anything go, or if anything has a little extra sparkle to it. Taking again, good body notes. And if you need to, jotting down words. But the body part's the most important. Got it? Okay. So I've clearly gone over my 20 minutes. I can, if you're interested, that you can reach out and we can talk about how not just how these things move in a cycle all the way around, but how they also can be used to put boundaries and control or appropriateness on each other in a way that allows things to not get out of hand. Very quickly, that expansiveness and that quiet and that sitting with what is that we just did in metal can also calm down the, ooh, what next? And what about this? And what about that wood drags into the conversation. And wood's ability to be like, and now we're going to do this, and here's the plan, and we have a structure, can also help that when earth gets a little too gooey and starts spreading out and you're starting to feel everybody and everything and be way over connected, eating something sour, which is the flavor associated with wood, can help sort of astringe that and help you know where your edges are. And that same belonging and community and really deeply held communal connections can also help mitigate the fear so that you can find the courage and the curiosity. And the courage and the curiosity can help you put some edges on things that get too much. You know, overly excited, connecting too much. Having yourself some stillness and some quiet and some appropriate boundaries will allow this to be appropriate and not burn the whole house down, or burn out and sit in a little puddle of embers feeling sorry for itself. And that same warmth and love and connection that happens in fire can then also help mitigate grief and can also help share awe and beauty. And so anyway, we can go on about this for ages, but ask me about this or my dog or my kid and I will talk to you all day. The important part of all of this conversation, though, is that do not lose sight of the fact that the 5 are describing the 2, which is describing the 1. And at this point, you may ask, okay, but what about 3 and 4? All right, so very quickly, you've got the 1, it's seen in terms of the 2. The 3 is the number for movement. And it is not only man standing between heaven and earth, it is also the psychological concept that with any 2 people, there are 3 things in the room. The 2 people and the relationship between them. That's the 3. That's why it's the one associated with change and movement also. And the 4 is the 4 directions. And then the moment you put yourself in the center in the 4 directions, you get yourself to the 5, and then it goes from the 5 to the 6, and the 6 to the 7, and the 7 to the 8, and the 8 to the 9, and the 9 is the most auspicious number because it's 3 times 3. And 27 is even better because it's 3 times 3 times 3. And then you end up with the 10,000 things after that. And that, I think, is everything I was going to say, other than keep it moving. I learned this quote when I was in elementary school. I think my sister had a little book of Piet Hein's poetry called Brooks. And it will be what is on whatever memorial stone there is for me when I go. And is the inspiration also for the logo for my practice to keep things moving. There you go. That's it. If you have any questions, you know all the ways to find me. It's in the handout. And if there's anybody has any questions, I'm open to answering them if I can.
Janice, thank you so much. That was brilliant. I think I'm going to rewatch it and do it all again and kind of just practice articulating both of those, because that's where the thing is, and then to just feel it through. But thank you. And I think this should become a short adventure course. I'm just saying.
Sorry, I ran over time. I mean, I could have done like the whole 20 minutes on just one element. So,
yeah, no, exactly. Which is the magic of it, because it's like a kind of little taster. And I think we can all see the magic that is Janice. Thank you so much.
Okay. Not my magic, just the conduit.
Well, if the conduit has its own magic. It's brilliant. Thank you.
You're